Sauce.
Hey, you like Pez?
It looks like that. Here's Heaney from the boundary line. He's an expert at these. From the boundary line!
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez and you are here for a pre-season free agency show. And to do it, I am here with Sauce as always.
Hey guys, very, very exciting time. Pez, normally as a Saints fan, you're very excited about this period, but I don't know if you'll be excited this time because you actually played finals football, which is a little bit unusual.
I played finals football, but still in the news. We're going 2 years in the running for MVP for the trade period, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Perry and I are both actually avid NBA fans, so with the way that the off-season and trade period and draft and the way that all works for us as a Minnesota Timberwolves fans, normally it's probably our most active and enjoyable part of the season of the NBA season, Pez.
Yeah, I remember many years just the thing we look forward to most about the NBA season is watching the draft and picking up players at pick 44 and stuff and getting excited about their highlights package.
Yep, because that's about as good as it gets for the depleted sort of basketball team that we were. But we are here to talk football. And we are to get into the off-season. That feels a little bit weird that we're getting into the off-season so soon, a week after the sort of grand final celebrations.
Because we did it. It was a month before the grand final. We were already into it. It was going on everywhere.
Yeah, it was crazy sort of stuff. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at the free agency signings that have been done over the little break and get into some of the rumours and some of the trades that have already gone down as of today.
Yeah, I'm so glad we didn't start this a month ago or 5 weeks ago because we would have been talking about the same rumours over and over again like the AFL media has. But luckily the free agency is over. Trade period's just begun, so do one show, cover free agency, a little bit of trade rumours, do another show, cover the trade period, and we're done and dusted.
It is a little bit fun, though. I don't know if you've had to listen to it, Pez. Trade radio. Geez, that is good, listening to some of the rumours and just listening to people call up and the experts and list managers. Amazing how many different rumours get spun around and the reasons people are leaving clubs. I find that it's really heightened this year because of the hub life.
Yeah, it is insane. I'm really, really glad you mentioned the callers because that's some of my favourite people to listen to where they go, hey, well, why can't we just get this player and just give up this? And they want to give up nothing. Like Bulldogs supporters want to trade Josh Bruce and get the world back.
Oh, so they're like Essendon's list manager.
Oh, Dodoro, what a hard man to work with.
What a hard man to work with. It's someone put it to the best way to put it is just, it's sort of like asking for everything in return but giving up nothing. Like, oh, here's a half-eaten pizza and I'd like you to pay full price for it. And I'd also like you to buy me another pizza there to sort of just snack on as we go. Like he's absolutely ridiculous in what he asked for.
And do you know, well, you probably don't really know, every footy fan would know or have heard of Dodoro, but every other club, you don't really know who their main guy is because they're not in the news.
Except for Geelong's one, Stephen Wells.
Stephen Wells is always in the news and doing interviews and things. But yeah, but you don't really know about all other clubs because he just does stuff year after year, just a brick wall, doesn't let anything pass and asks the world. Just for example, we know that Adam Sard is trying to get across to Essendon and Carlton are doing that and they're going, all right, well, what do we want for him?
Yeah, probably pick one. I think he's worth about pick one.
Oh, well, yeah.
We
want pick one.
as well.
We want Harry McKay. We want Patrick Cripps. We want Jacob Wiedering. And give us Matty Cruiser to put in our assistant coach's box now that he's retired.
Yeah. And we're going to give you Sard, but we're not going to allow him to train there or we're not going to allow him to live in your vicinity. He's basically just going to play your games on the Saturday and that's it.
Yeah, that's not far away from what he asked for for the first time. And it comes back straight away where Carlton just say no. And then he'll just take one piece away and just go, all right, I want this. It's ridiculous.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever played like fantasy basketball, Pez, where you sort of have the fantasy leagues, very similar to your super coach. And there's always that one guy in the league that just wants to trade you everything. And they always like throw you a ridiculous trade. And it'll be like, I'll offer you Gary Ablett, Patrick Dangerfield and Joel Selwood. That's what I'm getting. And I'm going to give you Adam Sard. And you're like, well, hang on a tick, that's not fair at all. And he's like, no. I'm just starting the conversation. Just trying to get some dialogue going. I'm like, well, okay, well, I understand it. You could start a little bit more polite because by now I'm like, get out of that. Boom, hang up the phone. And that's what's happening around the league is no one wants to actually deal with him at all.
It's like old school Monopoly when someone's got Mayfair and someone's got the other blue one, the other expensive one, and they try and trade with each other, and the game doesn't go on for a couple of hours because they're still discovering what trades, and they're both brick walls, both Dodoros.
Yeah, I mean, I make fun of the way that Dodoro's been doing it, but I do love rumours about it. I do love the mix and match with the contracts and player trades and stuff like that. But Pez, one thing that I really don't like about the trade period and the free agency, and it's been something that you and I have discussed personally, and I've heard a lot of radio shows talk about it now, is this compensation business, this free agency, unrestricted and restricted free agency. Still, we just had a discussion before trying to work out exactly how the unrestricted and restricted things work out. It's very confusing. What's even more confusing is this compensation pick, and I was wondering what your thoughts are, Pez, because I've got my thoughts on it, and as a St Kilda fan who has definitely taken advantage of some of these things, and in the deal that got done today, you got out really nicely in the compensation pick, but there are a lot of people that believe a lot of clubs are getting screwed over and that the trade compensation that's getting back isn't worth the player that they're losing.
Yeah, it's because the AFL are looking at it in a different light. As we have discussed, the everyday fan is looking at the player's name and how big they are and what they are worth. So we spoke about the Buddy Franklin example. He's not worth pick 18 or pick 19, what they got back, Hawthorn, but they did win the premiership that year. They did finish first, so what they got back was there. In the NBA, I think it's a little bit different because the roster size is about 15, whereas in the AFL it's 45. We'll probably go down to around 40 or so with the coronavirus stuff that's been going on. But I think clubs need to get compensated because they lose that player out. I don't love the compensation, how it happens, and it's not really clear to a lot of the fans, but it's based on how many years they sign, what the price is, how they negotiate it, and then they go, all right, well, they're going to pay him that. So if they're going to pay him that, then he must be worth this. He's the end of first round. Your first round pick was 17, so you get pick 18. But if you were actually down the bottom of the ladder and you finished 17th, your pick would have been 2, and then you would have also got pick 3.
Yeah, so I don't mind the actual compensation system in terms of the AFL, in terms of determining fairness. Now, obviously, there's a range of different things that go into what makes it fair. And as you said, there's 3 things that actually that the AFL take into consideration. It's the contract that's being offered, not the contract that they were previously on. So if I'm offering Brad Crouch, example, 2 years, 400,000, that's a really low offer. So then that gets put into a category against other players in the league and the percentage of players within the league that are on that, with that amount of money and as well as with the amount of years left on it. And then it goes on to what's the team who's receiving it, where they finished last year in the ladder. So as you said, that massive deal to Sydney, Hawthorn get the compensation. They got a first-round pick. The issue was that they just won the premiership, so they get pick 18, and that's how it is. And then you look at someone like, a couple of years ago when Gary Ablett got back, and we end up, sorry, not Gary Ablett, so the Tim Kelly one, where they went through that, and we end up getting heaps of different trades there. It's because of the amount of money that West Coast offered him and the lucrative deal that they had.
Yeah, it's a very strange system, and it's like in the NBA, I think that's why there's teams that always win the title, the big name clubs, and those cities that are smaller cities that people don't want to go to, they never get compensated. So they'll get the number 1 draft pick, they'll have them for 2 or 3 years, and then by the time they're in their prime, they're choosing to sign with Miami Heat or Los Angeles Lakers or some of the really big clubs. So I think that's why the NBA is so lopsided in terms of who wins premierships and things, and AFL probably need to try and stay away from that. But introducing free agency many years ago that they did probably didn't help in terms of that.
I think it's a good model, free agency. It definitely allows players to explore those other options. I understand the compensation, but I think the compensation is hard to determine, especially when if, for example, Adelaide this year, Adelaide get compensated all these picks and they end up, first 3 or 4 picks, everyone else gets pushed back. And, for a team, you look at the GWS Giants who are looking to potentially lose a player currently as we speak in Jeremy Cameron. It's hard for them to get compensation because every time, whatever his compensation is going to be determined, by the time the period's finished, they're not getting a top 10 pick. It's been pushed back probably, 17 or 18 or probably even further because they're dealing with Geelong and Geelong's got pick 14. So a pick 14 is now probably potentially pick 20. And that I don't like, but I don't like the compensation at all. I think that if players spend a certain amount of time there, like Cameron's been there for 7 years, he is a restricted free agent. If he's unrestricted, he can basically walk. I think that if you haven't been able to sign him in whatever period you've had him there, then he should be fair game. But I understand why they're not doing it, because we don't want a model where, Collingwood, Hawthorn and Carlton are always getting all the best players or even Geelong in that matter, because players just come there because they know that they can go there. They know they've got a successful model. They know they're a good club. So
they can compete for a premiership.
Exactly right. So I understand why they do it, but to me it makes no sense. And I think that some players don't put a lot of work into keeping players because they know that you're going to walk anyway. I might as well just, I might as well make sure that he's healthy. I won't play him. I won't do him the due diligence. We saw it a couple of years ago when Tom Lynch, where Gold Coast basically isolated Tom Lynch. Now, they got compensated for that, but...
And they were down the bottom of the ladder at that stage.
Yeah, so they got compensated for it, but they basically isolated this bloke. And I just don't think it does the right thing, because either way, they were getting compensated, whereas they should be... If he's walking away for free, they're doing more to try and keep him there.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it.
I think the biggest stakeholder in the NBA is the player, and they've got the most power. And I think it's becoming that way in the AFL as well, because back in the early 2000s, you'd say the club probably had more of control over what was happening. And then 2009 came, 2010, they started going, you know what? I don't want to play for you. Trade me to this club and this club only. So the club pretty much has no choice. They can go, all right, we're going to trade you to that team, or you're just going to go in the draft and you're going to say, I don't want to play for any other club except this club, and get picked up in the draft anyway. That's the thing I hate about it.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're starting to see more. You saw it 2 years ago with Gold Coast when Gary Ablett said that he wanted to come back to Geelong, and Gold Coast said, well, nah, we're not doing it. Geelong said basically, hey, we'll try and do a deal. We're not getting it done. You saw it last year again with Tim Kelly. You're seeing it this year now with Jeremy Cameron, and teams are now just starting to match so they can get more compensation back, but have no actual reality of signing these players. And I think that the power is slowly starting to get back to the clubs. The only issue is that mid-year draft that they have, and that, what do they call it? The preseason draft that they have, where players can walk and potentially get picked up for free. But now I think you're starting to see that, Jeremy Cameron, if he does walk away and that they're unable to get a deal done, Geelong and GWS, then he potentially could go in that draft and say that he's only going to play for Geelong, but Geelong don't pick till pick 17. So there are 17 other clubs that might take a risk on a one-year flyer, and if he wants to get paid the year after, he has to play.
Yeah, well, it's very strange. And I don't think clubs do that, because clubs put themselves too far behind. So if that actually happened, I think he would get to Geelong, and that would be a really poor way to actually get to Geelong, because you don't like to see it. You don't see any compensation for GWS. Then they match the offer. They've done this. So I think GWS have done the right thing by actually coming out and saying, we're not happy with the compensation. Jeremy Cameron's a Coleman medalist. He's an All-Australian. We need to, get what he's worth. So they've gone, bang, Geelong, I know you've got 3 first-round picks, so I match it. How badly do you want him?
So now we have to do a trade. Now we're having dialogue between each other. But I think you're right. I think that clubs aren't going to do that, because it also paints a bad picture for the club. Like, we don't care about the player. We don't care about their feelings. We're just going to use him for a one-year deal. So, for example, if Adelaide picked him up, who's going to want to openly sign at Adelaide when they know that all they care about is the dollars on the scoreboard, and they're not caring about the player because he doesn't want to be there. We don't care. You're signing for a year.
Well, that's the biggest thing in AFL at the moment, and you saw it in 2020 with COVID and the hubs, is player welfare, player management, and keeping the players, the biggest stakeholder in the game, happy. So if the fans are unhappy with a rule or something, it happens every year. The fans are unhappy. There's no effect on the clubs.
Yep.
But if the player's unhappy, there's a massive effect on the clubs. They could go out to go against your culture, give your club a bad name, do all these different things. So you need to really keep them happy, keep them a part of it, keep them involved, and you kind of have to give them what they want while they're at your club to try and, convince them to stay.
And then also when you're saying goodbye, making sure you're not burning bridges with the player community, and you don't come out as the the giant, the tycoon trying to rule the roost, and we don't care about the players. And it's a very hard balancing act, and some clubs are doing it really well. There are some clubs that we'll talk a little bit later in some of the rumours that are going down and some of the dramas that are not handling these situations great, and are probably putting themselves in a on the back burner when it comes to the way that they're being respected in the AFL community.
Yeah, and one of the big ones we will talk about is the Collingwood Football Club and how they are treating Adam Treloar, and that's probably one of the big stories that we will get into. The other interesting thing about player welfare, you've also got managers. So we've got player managers, and what the player managers do is they're trying to get the best deal for the player, and so they get the most money because they have a bit of an interest in that. But when player managers are really good and they do multiple different people, they know how much this person's getting for this club, so they can actually talk to another club and go, well, my client here is getting this much, so this client here, he's worth this much. So, and they've got those bargaining chips, they've got that internal information that they can't give out to anyone else, but I'm sure they would be discussing it behind closed doors with every club.
Yeah, and that's one of the things actually that I'm glad that you brought up the pay scales and the amount of money that players are making, because we don't know the amount of contracts that are going down and what players are worth, because all that is kept quiet. I think that could actually alleviate some of these problems if all the players' salaries were known. That way, when they are dealing these compensation picks, it's a little bit more reality that you can start to realise that, hang on a tick, Geelong have signed this player for this amount of money, and then he very clearly goes into that top 15% of players of that age. That way, it's actually measurable. At the moment, as you said, we use Jeremy Cameron there as the example, because that probably is the biggest one that's going down from day one of the free agency, where GWS matched the offer sheet. Yes, he's a Coleman medalist, but if you look at his year last year, it wasn't a very good performer. GWS didn't do well. He didn't do amazing. So what do you measure it on? Do you measure it on his 4-year stint, or do you measure it on that 1 year? Now, Geelong could have said, hey, that's fine that you're playing this and this and this. Here's your contract, but these are your incentives. If you start playing better, you obviously get more. You get, we know that the All-Australians and the Coleman medalist and what other things, they have Rising Star in there. They have all these incentives on there, amount of games played, amount of goals there.
I'd be very shocked if Jeremy Cameron won the Rising Star next year. That'd be a good achievement for him.
Well, if he's going to get in the rookie draft, he might. Get him through the rookie draft. That is a nice little first-year player.
Pre-season might get it.
But that might start to clean up some of this mess, and clubs, crying, like, as we talked about with Essendon, Saad, well, you could actually measure what he's actually worth, because you know what he's worth. You can compare against other players, and you can compare against games played. You can start to have a bit of projection, some sort of formula that actually is measurable. But at the moment, it's just guesswork. No one knows what anyone's worth, and it is just guesswork.
Yep, and everyone's got an idea, but, the people in the media that do know, they're not allowed to just come out and say it. They say around the $700,000 to $950,000 mark. That's $250,000 difference.
That's a big difference. That's a big difference.
That's a big lot of money for a year in the AFL. So we'll get to all those rumours and things that are going on. But the first thing we do need to get into is all the deals from free agency. Now, we did speak about restricted and unrestricted free agents before. If they're restricted, the club that they're from have a chance to match that offer. If they do match the offer, then the other club would need to offer them a trade to obviously get the services of that player. If it's unrestricted, they can just walk, and then compensation pick from the AFL goes into the basket of that club.
Yeah, most definitely. And glad I think you summed it up, mate, because I struggle to sum up things at the best of times. But let's get into day one. And day one was probably the most active, and it generally is, because everything in the media has already pretty much been signed and delivered. They're just waiting for the official handshakes to go through, or the official COVID fist bumps, or whatever they're doing now, the Zoom calls. But let's get into day one of the free agency.
Yeah, so Gold Coast, I guess, made the first move, you could say, and they signed Rory Atkins as an unrestricted free agent, and Adelaide receives an end-of-second round compensation, which isn't that bad, because Adelaide were sitting on the bottom of the ladder. So for a player of Rory Atkins' calibre to get a, end of second round, it's like a start of a third round type pick. Decent compensation for a player like that.
Very decent, considering Adelaide last year really didn't have anything much. He didn't play many games last year, only played the 4 games last year, had a little bit riddled with injury, and obviously they were going through that rebuild. But for the Gold Coast, it's a great pickup. They get that 26-year-old, sort of that mid-range age group. They get some definite experience there. He's played a fair amount of games, probably coming up to his 100th game, probably just played it actually, 102 games or something like that. get some experience. He gets in that that sort of midfield sort of area. He's going to help out some of those young guns. I really like the signing for Gold Coast.
Yeah, they've signed him for a reason. They know what they've gone after and they've got it. Being an unrestricted free agent helps, and they get their man, and hopefully he does improve their list, and Matty Rao comes back from carrying that club and doesn't have to carry him as much next year.
It'll definitely help his shoulder injuries, which is ironic because that was his injury.
So there you go. The second one off the rank is Carlton offered restricted free agent Zach Williams a massive deal. It was rumoured between 900 and 950,000 per year.
Yeah.
And Giants just go, nah, we're not matching that. And they received a first round compensation, obviously, because the contract was so large.
Yeah, massive. And it was only a 4-year deal too, which, we spoke before about 250,000 being a big difference, but the years are really important too. When it's a 4-year deal versus a 5-year deal, that is a massive chunk of change. And it's what players are looking for, whether they take the risk on themselves or whether they go, you know what, I need to lock down my year, especially when, Williams has come back from an injury, had that Achilles injury a couple of years ago. I think he, on the eve of his first game back was when they played Sydney in that final, and he came back after missing majority of the season with an Achilles. He's been in pretty good form since then, but that's what he'd be looking to do, is a long-year deal to lock down to secure his future. Yeah,
he secured his future, and I can't believe he's on that much money because majority of his career, he's played off the half-back line. Yes, he's a ripper kick. He was teaming up towards the end of the season there with Whitfield, and they wanted the ball in Lockie Whitfield's hands or Zach Williams' hands, and a great player to watch, but 900, 950K for a player like that, they've got to be playing him in the midfield.
You have to play him in the midfield, and that's what GWS did this year when sort of, the shit hit the fan is when they were down in games and they needed to make adjustments, which Leon Cameron was very good at doing, making adjustments. They put him in the midfield and he injected some life into there. Has he got the engine to do a whole game in there? I was listening to a podcast with Dylan Buckley, and who obviously played at the GWS, and in the time trials, the 2K time trials, he definitely wasn't at the top of the pack or at the middle of the pack either. So he'll need to work on his tank, able to run out a game in the midfield, which is what he's going to be paid to do. It'll be interesting. It's a risky signing for me.
He's got a big preseason coming up.
He's got a massive preseason.
But if he doesn't care, he can just, take that money to the bank because the deal's obviously done and signed. The next one is of high interest for you with Geelong, just losing the premiership. So they're just adding a couple more pieces to try and, take that one step further in 2021. Geelong signed Isaac Smith as an unrestricted free agent. He's had big history with Geelong and a lot of success at Hawthorn. A lot of games against Geelong that were very close. He's actually won Geelong a game.
He does, won us a semi-final, which is really good.
By missing after the siren.
Isaac Miss.
Yeah, Isaac Smith.
I'll have to stop calling him that one.
Because you're going to be going for him now. But Hawthorn receive third round compensation and best for both parties in this one.
I don't know if it is the best thing for both players. Isaac Smith obviously wants to go and get another premiership medallion. He'll get his fifth? Was he part of that first one?
No, 3.
So that'll be his third one that he's looking for by signing with Geelong. I mean, is he a walk-up start? At age 31, he's got a lot of experience. He does play a different sort of winger midfield sort of role, and he does it differently. He's a very unique sort of player. I don't love this signing. I think that, we lost Gary Ablett because he was over 30 and, retired, and we've put in another 31-year-old. He knocked back a 3-year offer from Melbourne and signed 2 years for Geelong. But for me, I just think it pushes too many young players who were getting some finals experience in there, this year. And you go back 2 years ago when Jordan Clark, he was a regular startup before he broke his arm. I think it puts our future a little at sort of at bay, and realistically, do we get better? I mean, positionally, we get a little bit better in terms of, adding Isaac Smith, and we lose Gary Ablett in terms of the, not calibre of player, but the age and performance from last year. Doesn't move the needle that far? For me, no, it doesn't.
Oh, well, Geelong obviously think that it does, and being on top or at the top 14 years, they've got the right formula, I'm guessing.
Yeah, most definitely.
Getting those players in, paying them not too much, and giving them, as we know, the pubs in the bay areas, the parts of the beach that no one else can go to. They get a lot of things. They always talk about the lifestyle. I want a lifestyle change to go down to Geelong. If you want to go down there, you can go and live there and travel, or you can.
It's miles away. It's miles away from Melbourne.
You go down there a lot. How long does it take?
From where I live, it takes about 40.
40 minutes.
45. On the way back after a loss, it definitely takes a lot longer, but it's about 45 minutes.
Take a couple of extra turns and things like that. But only a weird one for me. I really like Isaac Smith as a player. I think he's really damaging in a top team rather than a team that's not competing for finals like Hawthorn. So I think they can make use of him with that damaging left foot. But with Mitch Duncan and Sam Menengola on the wings, Chris Scott obviously has a plan to not really play one of them on the wings and push Duncan maybe more into the midfield and have Menengola on one wing, Isaac Smith on the other.
I think it'll actually push Blitzarza back down into a standalone sort of defender role. He was sort of taking some stints through the midfield and through that sort of winger sort of period. So you're right, it definitely will push some people back into their natural positions. It'll probably push Dangerfield probably even more full forward, knowing this move.
He'll be in the cheer squad.
He'll be in the cheer squad, exactly right. He'll be marking the goals that Isaac Smith is kicking for us.
Well, we need a new goal umpire, or we need the AFL to actually recognise a proper goal umpire to be able to, umpire preliminary finals and grand finals.
We do, mate. I can tell that you're stalling because the next one on our run sheet is North Melbourne.
This is the one I'm most excited for because Norf have lodged an offer for a restricted free agent in Aiden Core. The Giants do not match and they received a second round compensation, which is good for the Giants. But North, they signed someone again. Congratulations. Well done.
This is actually a good signing for North Melbourne. They get someone...
Considering they don't have a full list.
Well,
they've got about 10 players on their list.
It's a good
that makes 11.
It's a good deal for them because they get a young bloke. He's only 26 years old. He's been pretty consistent for GWS. He averages 15 or so games. The last 3 seasons he's played a total of about 50 games. He was in their best side. Or you would say Aiden Core. Did they overpay for them? Probably. We don't know what they've paid.
It doesn't matter. They're not going near their salary cap this year because they're not even going to get near the list of players that are available. So Aiden Core, congratulations. You go to North Melbourne to kill your career, and North are going to do what they've done to so many other players. So poor Aiden Core from GWS.
You're an arsehole, man.
Oh,
come on. The young bloke is taking that next step in his career. He's going to be one of the experienced players in a very, very, very young, inexperienced list. And key defenders, they're hard to come by, and he's a pretty solid key defender.
He'll get in the top 6 best players at North, but I think that's part of the issue.
Next year, we need to make an agreement. They're going through a rebuild. You can't pile on them. Okay, this is what we've been calling for them for years to do, is to rebuild. Signing a 26-year-old when they are rebuilding is a good move. Okay, they've gone for a little bit of experience. They haven't overpaid for a player. They've given him for 3 or 4 probably. It was probably a 5-year deal. Probably, let's be realistic, a 5-year deal knowing North. So they'll set him until he's 31, and as he goes out the door, those kids will be ready. They'll be ready for a 5-year plan, like Richmond. Isn't it a 5-year plan? That's the
5-year plan? All right, cool. So by 2025, we'll give them to. North need to have 3 premierships. Let's see if that happens.
Let's go for 3 finals appearances. I'll take that money, over under.
All right, I'll go under. Brisbane, we'll move on from North because we don't really like speaking about them too long. Brisbane lodged an offer for Essendon's restricted free agent Joe Danaher. The Bombers did not match, receive a first-round compensation, which wasn't too bad for them. I think it's around pick 7. They're just waiting to see if that's going to stay at pick 7 towards the end of the trade period and things like that.
Not bad for someone who's played 15 games in 3 years. That to me is where I have an issue with the compensation they get on this one. You're literally the compensation here, and Brisbane I've definitely paid on potential because he has shown that he can be a damaging forward. He is a really polarising player. He needs to get his goal kicking inaccurate, be a little bit more accurate, but he'll fit right in at Brisbane because we know that they struggle in front of goal. I saw a nice little meme on Instagram that Geelong beat Brisbane in the prelim final. Brisbane 862. As in terms of the points there with adding Joe Danaher to their list. So, but it's a great signing for Brisbane. They needed a key forward. They needed some more scoring capabilities. We know that they are a fast team. They score frequently. Joe Danaher, if he can stay on the park, he's a big player for them. He's a big player in the AFL, and it's a shame for Essendon to lose a name like Danaher. So he must have really been hurting there.
Yeah, he wanted out the year before. Dodoro didn't get it done for him. He would have been.
Oh, really? He didn't get it done.
He would have been over at Sydney, but that's a dangerous forward line for Brisbane. You've got very big potential. They just need to kick accurately with Danaher, Hipwood, Charlie Cameron. Rayner. They've got a few weapons down there.
Yeah, most definitely. The next one, as we've sort of mentioned, was a big one. So Geelong on the first day lodged the paperwork for GWS restricted free agent Jeremy Cameron, and the Giants took their time, took the weekend, had a couple of nice little, probably pub visits. They had a little bit of a relax on those sunny GWS beaches, and then come back Monday morning. They decided to match, and they were not happy with the compensation offered. They were really disappointed, and now reports are that they're not even picking up the phone. They are playing super hardball, very similar to, reminds me of the Dallas Mavericks a couple of years ago with DeAndre Jordan, where Chris Paul locked him in a room, and they're basically saying, nope, you're not going anywhere, and that's what it feels like now. GWS are just going,
he was already signed for Dallas.
Nope, we're not delivering, but crazy stuff. For me, GWS had to match the offer.
Someone had to stand up. The first club in the history to actually match an offer.
Yep, and they definitely needed to, but they've already sort of shown their cards, because what they did do is a couple of days later which we might talk about now because it sort of links into it, is that they actually acquired Jesse Hogan in a trade from Fremantle, receiving an Eagles 3rd round pick. So they've already replaced him. So he's basically out the door. They've shown their cards. Really interesting move from GWS.
Yeah, they've kind of said, you know what, we've got a replacement for you already, but we're matching your offer, so we just want to get better compensation for you. But Geelong are probably sitting there going, you've already signed another forward, so we offer you this, take it or leave it, and we'll see who calls whose bluff.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It reminds me typically of when you're a child and you storm out of a room, you're really angry, and you slam that door, and then you like pop in. Oh, sorry, mum. Like you've put the big statement down, but then you just want to cover your ass a little bit on the way out there. Like, oh, sorry guys, but it's a crazy move that they had to stand up to. You know, these big clubs that are making those offers, and the AFL compensation, they got it wrong. He's definitely a Coleman medalist. He'd probably be in their top paid players at GWS. I mean, with what Geelong was offering, a smaller amount to what GWS were offering, that's probably where they bit themselves in the ass. But realistically, they've got to make a stand, and they've sort of half done it the right way, and then they sort of just, yeah.
I'd love to see the Giants just make an absolute stand, refuse every trade offer, and play Jeremy Cameron next year and try and have another stint at it.
He'll walk though. He doesn't want to be there. He'll go into the preseason draft. He's already said he doesn't have to stay. He's not signed, so GWS would have to sign him.
Well, that's the thing I really dislike about this
and
period.
that's what's so stupid, is that he's not contracted.
So GWS have no leg to stand on then, because they've said, all right, we'll match your offer. We're going to play you, but you can't if he chooses not to.
That's what's so stupid. He can just say, no, I don't sign it. But then he can't go to anywhere he wants. Like, he's had 8 years at the club. They can't sign him. And they've tried to sign him. They've given him a more offer than anyone else, which they're entitled to. And what he's saying is that it's not money, it's lifestyle. Like, you know, he needs to be close to his family.
We'll know what happens. Geelong usually get the deals done.
Yeah, they're normally pretty. Stephen Wells does a great job down there. I listened to him on Trade Radio today, and he continually said, "We know what GWS wants, and within reason, we will be making a deal that suits both teams."
It's a big word. Within reason.
Within reason.
How good's that? All right. Move on from that big one. I'm sure we'll be speaking about it on next week's show. West Coast, they got Zach Langdon in a trade. GWS received the Eagles' 3rd round pick.
Good pickup for the Eagles. They get a forward in Zach Langdon, 24 years old. Wanted to be home. He was drafted from Claremont, so he's going back to his home state. That one was a pretty mundane sort of done and
Stock
dusted.
standard, really easy to
very
deal
good
with.
to do.
Next one was Gold Coast. They got Oleg Markov in a trade from Richmond, and they received the Suns' 2021 3rd round pick. So not in this draft. Next year's draft. Yeah,
another really good signing from Gold Coast. They seem to be targeting those players around that 24, 26 range, as we said. I mean, he was sort of came into the season this year. He did spend a couple of years in the VFL and spent bouncing around from here to here. Basically, he got a couple of games this year in a pretty decent premiership side and a premiership dynasty, basically. He played a decent amount of football. He's a good sort of strong midfielder. Again, they're bulking up that midfield list, and he's been on Richmond's list for 4 years. Can't get a consistent gig, and he's learned from the best.
This is where teams are going to have a look at it. Dan Butler, he was on the outs at Richmond. St Kilda picked him up for a bargain basement price and became nearly an All-Australian. Oleg Markov, I'm not saying he's going to become nearly an All-Australian, but these are the sort of players you have to look at if you're a market like Gold Coast, where you've got to try and get those players, you do say around the right age, on the fringe of premiership sides, so they can't break in. If they did break in and they have played, 5, 6, 7, 8 games during that season, they've got that, premiership nous. They've been around those premiership players. They know how they train, so they can show your young team how to do it. So not a bad pickup for the Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, and you look at him. He's had 4 years on their list, and any time there was an injury or whatever, he was straight into the side. Like, he was only missing because there was two extra players better than him. That's pretty decent. He spent 4 years on the list. As you said, that premiership pedigree there. He's been seeing how they trained. He was pretty decent when he was playing. Like, we talked about him in the mix for that premiership side. He was named an emergency. It's a really good pickup.
There's going to be more players from Richmond heading across to other clubs, you'd imagine. Josh Caddy missed out on playing in the 22 for the premiership. He's been decent for a number of years, but he's already a 3-club player. So we'll see what happens with him later on. GWS acquired Jesse Hogan, as we said earlier, and they received Eagles' 3rd-round pick, which was traded earlier that
was in the Langdon one that's how they acquired that. But this is the one that a lot of people are talking about, and I don't see it being a massive sort of deal. Is that the Dockers acquired Hogan from Melbourne, and they gave up a decent sort of amount. They gave up Hogan and pick 65 to Melbourne in exchange for pick 6 and pick 23. Pick 6 ended up turning into your man, Ben King. So the Gold Coast Suns picked him up for pick 6. And there's been a lot of talk about how that sort of played out because obviously, Fremantle took a flyer on him, hopefully getting back to his home state and, be able to perform and put some of those mental health and that injury stuff and not only that, the diagnosis of cancer and some of those social things underway, but not to be. And 2 years later, he's been turned around for pretty much nothing.
Yeah, it's disappointing. They did put all their eggs in there, and he's still getting a gig after all the stuff he's gone through. He went home because he wasn't right with his mental health, and it didn't really help him with his footy. He did play a couple of games, kicked a few goals in 2020, but didn't give them what they gave up in the end, and they part ways very happily from each other. And GWS are going to take another punt on him because this Jesse Hogan, we remember him at Melbourne. He has the potential to be really talented. He's just got to put his mind to it.
You listen to I was listening to a podcast now and they said, would Jesse Hogan actually start in GWS's best side? And I'm thinking, well, if he's healthy and fit, why wouldn't he? If you look at his career, 2014 obviously didn't play any games. He had that injury. 15, 20 games, 44 goals from a first-year player. 2016, 21 games, 41 goals. 2017, 10 games, 20 goals, so definitely on track until he got, sick and injured. 2018, 20 games, another 40-plus goal season with 47. If you can get him fit and healthy, he's a polarising player, and hopefully good luck to the bloke, and hopefully he gets it all together, and hopefully he can find some form, and why wouldn't you take a risk on him?
GWS have done it.
You got him for nothing, so
they've gone in there. They haven't had to give up much at all, so... the potential plays a big part in some players' career, and this is why he's going to be a 3-club player. Hopefully it pays off. You never want to see a player continue to change clubs and then just end their career and go down a path that, isn't pretty for anyone involved. So hopefully he gets it right. Even if he doesn't get it right in his footy, hopefully he gets it right in his life, and he's got that lifestyle that Geelong offer in GWS, and he can go from there.
If we don't get Cameron, we might do a trade for him. We'll do a second trade, sign and trade is what they call it in the NBA, but... you'd be happy about this next signing, Pez. Well, actually, I don't know if you're happy. We haven't actually spoken about this, but the next one off the bat is Adelaide Crows chose not to match the offer for restricted free agent Brad Crouch. Obviously, Crouch has been part of the continual mass exodus at Adelaide, joined St Kilda, and they receive a 2nd-round compensation pick. I think they're going to get pick 23.
Yeah, as it stands at the moment. I'm very happy with this because I thought that what would have happened is St Kilda would have done a deal under the table with Adelaide and overpaid Brad Crouch so they could get a 1st-round compensation, which would mean pick 2 because they've obviously got pick 1. But I was surprised to hear that St Kilda stood strong. They said, you know what, we're not going to do any deals with you. We're not going to trade for him. We only want Brad Crouch if he's a free agent. And they called Adelaide's bluff, and Adelaide didn't match the offer in the end.
Yeah, it's a good signing. It's a good signing for St Kilda. They get another player, pretty cheap, I would say. I mean, they're lucky. This is going to sound horrible, but they're lucky that there were some misdemeanors at the end of Adelaide's season, and the Adelaide are in that middle of the rebuild, and that he chose St Kilda as the club that he wanted to go to. Obviously, seeing the success building last year and the way that they recruited, can find a role. Now, you and I have been very touch and go with Crouch because he is an accumulator of the pill. Isn't a damaging player though, and that's the role that he has previously. Played.
That's his brother. That's Matt Crouch. Don't you worry, Brad Crouch. You get all over him. He's ready to go next. Well, he's not ready to go because he's suspended for 2 rounds. But round 3, he's ready to go, and we'll slot him into that midfield nicely.
You get a 26-year-old who averages 1,000 touches a game, 0 impact, as we did mention. So it'll be interesting to see in the list and his role in St Kilda whether he does become a player. And sometimes you need an accumulator just in there to get the pill, and it might free up some of your outside or your inside players to be able to get it to the outside players and start that movement, which you were polarising when you did have that movement going. But interesting to see what at round 3 how he starts.
Yeah, starting at round 3, but I don't know how many teams would have been interested in him. I think there would have been more than just the one if he didn't have that illicit drugs little scandal.
But he's not a good fit for a lot of teams either. Like, you've got to have a good established midfield. Like, Gold Coast wouldn't have been a good pick for him because they don't have an established midfield yet.
Oh yeah, when Matt Rowell comes back, just got Matt Rowell.
Yeah, but like
he's established.
You're a flog. All right, but you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where he's like a Tom Mitchell, that it needs to be a good fit for him to work. He's not like someone that
don't
can just
tell me
walk
he's like
into a
Tom
side.
Mitchell.
Yeah, he just gets a lot of the pill. Just gets a lot of the pill. He'll be a Brownlow medalist, mate.
He'll be a Brownlow medalist, and we won't go anywhere. But Hawthorn, speaking about Hawthorn, they got Kyle Hartigan, another Adelaide player, another exodus since that 2017 grand final. And Adelaide receives the Hawks 2021 4th round pick, which won't mean too much to anyone, but Hartigan gets to go to Hawthorn.
Yeah, so he comes back to Melbourne. He's actually a Melbourne boy. He lives locally to where I grew up. He's a key defender, 28 years old. I mean, he's a consistent player. He plays basically every game of the year, but he's not he's not going to change the future of Hawthorn. But it is good that it's an interesting pickup actually, because they got him for a couple of years less, and they let some other players walk that they probably could have sort of moved into that role.
Interesting with this, I was watching the GWS versus Adelaide game. I think it was round 15, round 16, towards the end of the year, where Adelaide actually beat them. I was watching it with my brother, and my brother goes, "Oh, who's this guy?" I go, "You don't know who that is? It's Kyle Hartigan." And he goes, "Doesn't he play for Essendon? Like, surely he's only been in Adelaide's list for 2 years." And I said, "No, he's played over 10 years at least." I was like, he's
a 10-year player.
Is he really?
7-year player.
Oh, 7. That's pretty much 10. We'll round it up. And he was really shocked to hear that this Kyle Hartigan guy has got consistent games at Adelaide when they've been up and about as well during his period.
He played in the premiership, but obviously they didn't win. He played in a grand final.
So very interesting stat, and I think no supporters that don't go for Adelaide or aren't avid watchers of AFL like we are would really know who he is.
Look, he's a consistent performer. He's not as I said, he's not a game changer. He's not someone like a Harris Andrews in terms of a key defender. He's your old faithful. Will be there. He'll give up a couple of goals a game, but he'll also stop a couple of goals. He's just he's an all right signing.
You can get around him. The big ones. They're all the done deals, Sauce. We've spoken a little bit about the Jeremy Cameron, which is still up in the air, and seeing what Geelong are going to trade for him. A couple of other rumours that are really, really big. We mentioned it earlier in the show. The biggest one is Adam Treloar and the way Collingwood have been handling this.
Yeah, this one's a crazy story. So it was grand final week. It was actually, as we spoke about, that it sort of came out before the grand final had even been played. There were rumours that Adam Treloar wanted to move to Brisbane. That was the original, or to Queensland, because his wife obviously signed, I think, for the
Queensland Firebirds.
Yep, Queensland Firebirds. I'm glad you're on board with the netball, mate. But, and his wife and his daughter are going up there, and there was rumours that he wanted to go up there and join his family, which makes common sense. Then 2 days later, on a footy show, he just comes out and says, No. I'm happy to stay in Victoria. I want to
sign until like 2025.
Yeah, I want to be in Collingwood. We're happy to do the whole long distance thing. And then everyone sort of was like, well, hang on a tick.
What's
going on here? And since then, it has just spiraled as a back and forth. Is Collingwood are saying, oh, well, we're worried about his health and stuff. We don't want to be, him be separated from his family a little bit, unsure how he'd perform. And he's like, well, you guys don't worry about that. That's what I'm there.
They're just not happy with his contract and what they've given him and what they've re-signed him.
And that's what everyone was alluding to. Then crazy came out Monday night. Nathan Buckley was quoted as saying that he sat down with Adam Treloar and actually said, look, the reason that you're on the way out is that a lot of the senior blokes don't like you. Wow.
Voted in the way for you to go out. But he was actually shocked the year before.
He was.
Because that's come out. And that wasn't a really big deal like it is this year. Because,
everyone gets shocked.
Oh, he's going over to Gold Coast or whatever. But for him to have 4 or 5 years left on a contract, close to about $900,000 a year, the talk is about Collingwood's contract and their signings. Mason Cox apparently is going to be on about $600,000 if they don't get rid of him. You've got Brodie Grundy on close to $1 million a year for the next 7. Like, they've got some big contracts there to look after.
And the thing is that you can tell is, I think there's a little bit more to this because Brisbane have basically, as soon as that happened, Brisbane said, we're not interested. And Gold Coast basically could have picked him up for free.
Yeah.
Because the Collingwood don't want him, and they're like, we're not interested either.
The craziest thing is Collingwood just have said, we'll pay some of his salary.
Yeah. What? Like, that's alarm bells. And I think, to me, I think it actually speaks more volumes about Collingwood's list management than about this poor bloke. He obviously wants to be there. And if it was true about all these blokes not liking him, surely you'd pick up on that vibe. I mean, he's spending all this time
and
in the
not
hub.
re-sign him for however long you re-signed him for.
And they overpaid at the start to get him, as we spoke about, because he was tossing up between Collingwood and Richmond.
Yeah. Didn't that come back to bite him when he said, I'm going for premiership success?
Going for premiership success. But, it's interesting to see this. And to me, I don't know where this is going to go. And I don't... there's no real front runners for this Adam Treloar thing because every teams that are connected to them are like, we'll take him if nothing else happens, but...
They're all very keen observers, I think, looking over the shoulder. No one wants to put up their hand and say, yeah, we'll come, because they want Collingwood just to dig themselves a deeper hole and just pay a really big chunk of that contract. So if they're going to pay like $400,000 a year for his contract and a team only has to pay him $500,000 for a midfielder of that quality, bring him over to St Kilda. We'll bolster our midfield up even better.
You can have 2 players that accumulate the ball and don't do anything with it. You get 70 possessions between the 2 of them and lose by 10 goals.
Treloar just kicks it long. Like that's what he does. But at least I'll like my 30 disposal. 30 disposal bets.
Where's the best fit for Treloar at the moment? I know the Hawthorn,
Saints.
Western Bulldogs, St Kilda have been connected to them. No one is, again, really putting much interest in there because they want the stock to be so low that they're basically going to we'll pay your whole salary.
Hawthorn, no. Like they've already got a Tom Mitchell type. Western Bulldogs, they probably need to worry about their forward line and their back line before they try and bolster up their midfield. They've always also got that thing going on with Josh Dunkley, which we'll speak about as well. But I think Treloar would be best suited to St Kilda because they do need that ball winner in there. We don't have Matt Crouch. We've got Brad Crouch, who just gets the ball and looks after it.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep telling myself that.
He's completely different to his brother, and he's definitely not an accumulator. The fact that every second week you picked the wrong one in your betting, mate, definitely doesn't mean he accumulates it. The fact that you couldn't tell the 2 players apart is really telling.
You know what's good about 2021? I'll be able to tell them apart. They'll be on different teams.
Yeah, true. They'll be doing the same thing though. But it'll be really interesting in the next couple of days. Will be very telling. I think Essendon should go after him. I think he's a good fit for Essendon. I think Essendon, they're losing Sard. They are signed, probably going to sign Dunkley. Him and Dunkley in a midfield would be pretty damaging. You could put Darcy Parish back onto a wing where he's probably more preferred. Have McGrath in that middle. I don't know if they'll have the cap space, but if Collingwood's paying the full amount, then why wouldn't you?
That's a big struggle. Haven't won a final since 2004 and don't know if they've got the cap space for someone whose half of his contract's going to be paid by the other club.
Well, I'm just assuming that they haven't got the cap space.
Well, why else wouldn't they go for him? I don't know. But Adam Treloar, I think is a decent player. I think he would be a decent pickup for a team if not at that contract, if Collingwood are going to pay a significant amount.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, the next one. Now, Pez, I know that you're going to be happy talking about this because Ben Brown famous North Melbourne Coleman medalist, sort of got pipped last year. Was it last year? He missed out on the Coleman by one.
Oh,
vote.
Cameron kicked 9
10 in the last
10,
one.
yeah.
He missed out one. The year before, he famously didn't make the All-Australian, even though he won the Coleman medal.
Because he plays for Norf.
Yep. He has nominated, after being told that he was not required, Melbourne as his destination club. Deal hasn't been done yet. First of all, we talked about a rebuild. What are North doing? Why would you get rid of this player? I know that they're not going for winning games, but if you're trying to build a system, surely a lead-up forward is a good little cornerstone to start with.
When no one wants to go to your club and you've got this
Surely.
guy at your club, he's from Tasmania, he loves Tasmania. You guys are going to be playing, half your games at Tasmania eventually. You got to keep him there. He's the local blood of that Tasmania. I don't know. What do you look at? I've never been to Tasmania. What do you go down there to see?
Footy? Hawthorn? See Hawthorn? I don't know. It's nice. There's some nice greenery. There's the
Like
Cadbury.
wineries and stuff, is there?
Yeah, a little bit. There's a Cadbury factories
Stuff
down
like
there.
that? Because I can only think of it. I'd have to pack my coat and stuff because
It's
it's very cold down
It's
there.
cold and windy and wet.
Which is why his hairstyle as well suits him, keeps him warm. So why wouldn't you keep him in Tasmania? Ben Brown, he wouldn't have wanted to leave. If North didn't say, hey, we don't want you anymore, we're cleaning house, he wouldn't have requested a trade.
He might have. He might have when he realised everyone else was jumping out. Their coach was jumping out. Oh, no, the coach didn't jump out. Sorry, the coach was, walked away because of some health problems. They've got no, and that's the funny thing is they've got no coach, and they're shopping him. Like, sure, I just don't understand this. Melbourne has been the team that he has nominated. Great fit for Melbourne because
Oh, Melbourne, finally. They need a forward.
they needed a key forward. It does put
Even if it's a North reject, they've got to get someone in there.
Oh, but he look. I mean, I don't know if there's a look as a terms of an AFL footballer. I don't know if there's a place for a lead up footballer like he is, who's not very versatile in the forward line. Especially we've seen the last couple of years in Cameron and Hawkins in the Coleman medalists. Very versatile forwards, run up the ground, can kick around the body. For him, he is a one trick pony. He's a lead. Mark, take an hour
Amazing set shot.
to run up and then kick a goal. He's very easy to stop, and I think that we definitely saw it the last 2 years. That slow decline is all you have to do is put a body on him and stop that lead up, and he's very easy to stop. But
I know he's tall and stuff, but he kind of needs to be the third forward
yeah,
that can just lead up into the space once the first two main guys have made that space behind him. He can't make his own space because if you're blocking the lead forward space, you're blocking Ben Brown if he's the number one forward at North. So that's why it was easier to stop after that Coleman medal year.
yeah. I mean, it does put some questions into Melbourne's forward line if he does sign there, and it probably means that McDonald might be either moving down back to as a defender, or he might actually be requesting a trade if he sort of didn't mind himself as a forward. Don't know if the last season that went on is a great sort of resume.
Last couple for him, but he's. I don't know. Ben Brown fits at Melbourne. Go to Melbourne. He's going to be on teams that don't compete for finals and premierships for the rest of his career anyway. So Melbourne, you take him and see what happens there and move forward.
You do remember I did call Ben Brown to Melbourne in a podcast a little while ago. I said that it would be a great pickup for Melbourne. They should go after him.
Yeah.
When we're talking about end of season for...
Kudos to you.
You heard it here first. All right, speaking of things that we heard first, Adam Sard, we heard at the start of I think it was day one that Essendon were kicked out of final. So what's that, 5,000 something days away. Basically said, right, want to be at Carlton. And we knew right from the get-go that it was going to be difficult because, as we've said, Essendon are extremely hard to deal with, and this has been no different.
Yeah, I think Carlton will have to give up pick 8, which they have to.
Is he
to
worth?
get him.
Is he worth pick 8?
I don't know if he is, but some people have made the point of they're getting Zach Williams as well from GWS, and they give up pick 8. They didn't have to give up anything for Zach Williams, so it's like giving up pick 8 for both of them. But I don't agree with that because they've already got that. That's separate. You can't just go, oh, we signed him, so pretend he's a part of the deal, and then it will look better for us.
No,
that's not how it works. So,
and that's where the compensation is bad because they signed him first, Williams. And Sard, if they sign him at the same time, well, maybe let's say Sard's a better player, then how do you determine which pick's better? Like, that's crazy. I don't think he's worth pick 8.